So in one of the passage, he says,
Who is he?
Idrisha,
All right.
the full dynamic of the organ of evolution becomes operative only when something akin to detachment has been attained. This happens only when certain educational preparations have been made.
Read the first half of the first sentence slowly.
The full dynamic of the
Okay.
organ of...
What's the problem? Okay. Let's say we have a 4-year-old kid.
Mhm.
They've never been exposed to music.
Mhm.
Now, we decide as her parents that we're going to make her a piano player.
Mhm.
So we put her in a room with a bunch of pianos.
Mhm.
At first, it's just noise, bam, 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 right?
Mhm.
And she hears some things, and after like 6 months, she can pick out ding, 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 ding. So she got something, right? But she's not going to play piano that way. So they get her a teacher. The teacher says, well, first, we're going to do push-ups on your fingertips. Then she says, then you're going to run around the block a couple of times.
Mhm.
And then you're going to come and you're going to, I'm going to teach you this thing called scales. Have you ever heard of scales? And the student says, I hate scales. I don't want a scale. I want music, not scales. The teacher says, well, you're going to learn the scales. Because they know, like any teacher does, that unless someone learns the foundations, they're going to have 10 times more work later if they ever even make it, right?
Mhm.
So now that child's faculty of perfect pitch is thus far undeveloped. That child's faculty for memorization of the whole keyboard and what every note sounds like in relation to another, which takes years, right? That faculty is not developed. Her ability to hear when a note is out of tune, out of 20 notes, that faculty is not developed, but it will develop in time if she does the work. If she doesn't do the work, probably, maybe she's got perfect pitch, maybe she doesn't, but she's not going to sing and she's not going to play music because she doesn't know how to do it. Because she didn't do the work and the teachers didn't do the hard work of laying the foundation.
Mhm.
Now, 2 years later, this girl now let's make it 3 years later. Now she's starting high school, let's say. She's very good. And she goes back to the teacher and says, teacher, could you teach me some more of those scales like you did before? Because I want to keep going. And the teacher says, are you kidding? Scales are for losers. Scales are for people that don't know anything. So what is the teacher's opinion of scales? It depends on what the student needs. Everything depends on what the student needs. Now read the whole statement again and think about it. Read it slowly, nice and loud.
The full dynamic of the organ of evolution becomes operative only when something akin to detachment has been attained. This happens only when certain educational preparations have been made. Before the stage of conscious development, various indisputable experiences mark certain stages of advance. These give the individual both proof of his progress and strength to continue to the next stage. Unless he receives these illuminations in correct succession, he will stay at a stage of partial awareness or occasional concentration power. One of the least desirable results of such out-of-sequence development is when the candidate is not weaned from dependence upon his instructor.
Absolutely. But now you've put in another couple of paragraphs. But let's take the first part. What's the first part? The organ, the capacity. Who decides whether you have the capacity or not to do this work?
A teacher.
Right. So now, what if you went to a teacher and he said, no, you don't have the capacity?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do?
If teacher says I don't have a capacity, then I will ask them how I can develop the capacity.
Excellent. You don't stop. All right. But I mean, that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the kind of work that we're doing here requires a certain amount of intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
and a certain amount of energy, and a certain amount of maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the maturity that's the hardest to come by among tech kids because they got way too much money way too quickly, much too easily, right? So they didn't grow up. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes they have these really, really small, tiny little lives that they live right there in Silicon Valley, and they never get out. They never
Mm-hmm.
dance. They never cook for somebody. They never, go chanting, and they never go Christmas caroling or Hare Krishna dancing. They never do anything. So, and their lives are just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And of course, they're suffering, and so they want help. And of course, the help may not be what they're used to, because if they knew that already, they would have already done it. So let's keep going though. This is good. What's next in the passage?
Yeah, yeah. This was the passage that I wanted to ask. Like, what is the detachment thing that they are talking about? Is it just a state, or is it?
It could be detachment. So first of all, we have to give Idris Shah the benefit of the doubt. He's having to write for a general off. What book is that?
This is the
So
Sufis.
that's a public book. That's for the public. All right. That's not going to be very detailed.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the question?
That the detachment that they're talking about, is it?
Okay. What kind of things can we detach from in this world? Can we detach
So
our
yeah, like,
heads? Can we detach our heads? No.
no.
Can we detach our arms or limbs?
I mean, detaching from our desires and fears.
Again, how about concepts? How about ideas? You're not going to get rid of fear until you understand fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then you understand what there is to be afraid of and what there's not to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're like doing differential equations before you've done linear algebra.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just start at the beginning. What? Help me out. What is he saying there?
What do I what?
What is he saying to you in that passage that troubles you about asking questions or whatever else? Because to me, that he's like talking about piano students. Read it again and see if it applies to piano students.
Mm-hmm.
Try it.
I mean, he is talking about doing certain preparation before.
Correct. That's what doing the push-ups on your fingers is about. That's what running around the building to burn off excess energy so you aren't there fouling up the whole piano room. See if the thing applies to piano students and teachers. Keep going.